On Capitol Tonight, I'm Karina Kling. We have hit the final 6 weeks of the 85th Texas legislative session, and there's still a big divide over how best to balance the state's budget. As the two chambers debate whether or not to tap the state's savings account to help make ends meet in a tight budget year, the Texas Comptroller is pitching a new way forward for that fund, and he joins us now. Comptroller Glenn Hegar, thanks so much for being on the show.
Great to be with you as always.
Good to see you. I know that there's been a lot of talk about this proposal to overhaul the rainy day fund over the last couple of days. And basically, where did you come up with this idea? What exactly would it do? Break it down for us.
Yeah, great question. A simple thing is the Economic Stabilization Fund, our rainy day fund, was created in the 1980s when the last oil bust hit. And for the first 20 years, it was really a fund in name only. That was it. There was not much money coming in. Why? Because we had an oil bust, and there really wasn't much hope for oil exploration here in Texas as the levels we see today. And then you hit roughly 2006, fracking boom, capabilities, technology changed, and now Texas is home to roughly 50% of all the oil rigs operating in the United States, and the Permian Basin, the Eagle Ford Shale, other oil plays here in Texas are back alive again for decades to come. And so as the debate is, what do we do with the ESF? One, have the original intent, which is a savings account for us to bridge during an economic downturn, but knowing that so much money will come into the fund over the years, it just seems so logical to create a second portion within the ESF that would be functioning like an endowment. So in other words, my office through the trust company, like we do with tobacco endowment dollars, or we do with the money that was taken out and set aside for water infrastructure years ago, we invest those dollars. And to make sure, number one, in the first tier, which is the original intent, you cover inflation so you don't lose the purchasing power of that money when it's not used. And then the second portion, you would be able to create a revenue stream that the legislature would be able to hedge against what is my biggest concern as the controller, as a CFO, are the long-term liability issues of the state. Texas is in such a better shape. We have a AAA rating in the state of Texas, but my biggest concern, or the threat to that AAA rating, is really whether deferred maintenance, paying off debt over time, pensions, as we have continual discussion. I imagine you've talked about significantly with Houston and Dallas. Texas is not in that shape, and we want to make sure that we're not in that position. So this second portion, the complete revival, rechange of the ESF, would create an endowment tier, and every year we would have money come out of it that the legislature could decide how they want to appropriate to tend to these long-term balance sheet issues.
We do have that graphic kind of how you envisioned it and how you modeled it, and I know that you were before the House Appropriations Committee today, and I think, you know, kind of the big question is, you're trying to get this done this session. What's the likelihood of that? What are you hearing from them? What are you hearing from the leadership?
I think this week will give a better indication, as we've had the first hearing and talking about this issue. I had an op-ed last week, which is kind of the first rollout, a lot of media discussion through the weekend, and now here today and some other venues. So I think as everyone that I talk to, people go, well, why wouldn't we do that? Because number one, no one realizes for the vast majority that the Economic Stabilization Fund today just sits in the Treasury pool, and it doesn't even cover inflation. And so you're thinking, wait, we have a $10.2 billion fund, reigns as the largest out of all 50 states in the nation, and really today's concept is what we just literally buried in a coffee can on the Capitol lawn. That doesn't make sense. And so most people go, well, why wouldn't we do something different? Now, as you know, as you led off, there's only 6 weeks left in the legislative session, so the days are clicking very fast. But even if something doesn't pass this session, which I'm hopeful it will, if it doesn't, it'll give me the ability to continue to talk about this concept and lead up to next session. But I'm still very hopeful that we can make a change this legislative session to send it to the voters.
You mentioned the credit rating and the concerns over the state's credit rating, conservatives' concerns being hurt by this. Can you rest assured that that would not be a problem with this two-tiered approach? Yeah,
absolutely, because the issue number one is that top tier, which is the original purpose of the ESF under the proposal, is that it would be 8% of general revenue spending, the budget. And so if the budget goes up in some year, well, then that portion continues to grow. And so the fact is that would still be there for the legislature over time. It would be there for purposes of credit rating. But then the most important issue that We have been taking positive steps. The legislature's taken some positive steps on pensions, on deferred maintenance, road infrastructure, water infrastructure. However, we need to take more steps. And it would be that second tier, that legacy fund, Texas Legacy Fund as I call it, that would be set up as an endowment that would give us the ability every single year to ensure that we can deal with some of those long-term liability issues.
Yeah, how quickly, I mean, could we be looking at this in terms of the money flowing in and then flowing back out, so to speak?
Yeah, but the biggest question is how much, if any, dollars we would put in the second tier, the Texas Legacy tier, as I was mentioning. If there's no money going into it in year one, as long as the top tier is filled up, that 8% of general revenue, which would be about $8.5 billion under the current budget, then money would go into the bottom tier. But to me, the real issue is creating a system that in 5, in 10, 15, 20 years can make a significant difference and can be a game changer for future generations of Texans.
While I have you here, I know that you've been kind of been caught in the middle over this debate over whether to tap the rainy day fund, the $2.5 billion, as the House is wanting to do, and you've said that it's there, it's available, and that wouldn't likely hurt the credit rating.
That was
as
one of the
well.
questions earlier today that Chairman Zerwas had asked. So if they do use some ESF this session, would that change under this system? No, that's a tool in the toolbox. Just the same as they have a wide variety of tools in the toolbox, and Texas has been recognized as we have a lot of tools in the toolbox that the legislature can make decisions. And so because of that, that's one of the reasons that we have a AAA rating, because we have a lot of tools in the toolbox.
What about the constitutionality of what the Senate's trying to
Right.
do with the, some have called it an accounting trick, the deferring the payment or delaying
you know,
the
it's a very interesting issue. We assumed that those dollars would be appropriated per the revenue estimate that we gave back the day before legislative session. However, also knowing that because the dollars are coming in at the very end of the fiscal year, in August, and then in the second year of the biennium, most in August, maybe a little bit in July. The issue that's in there, it says the Constitution money in, money out. However, it has to be of net revenues. And the net revenue issue means we really don't know the net revenues until the close of the fiscal year. And much like, say, for example, when you go purchase something here locally and you pay a sales tax, if it's in the city of Austin, whoever is collecting that sends it to us, the Controller of Public Accounts. We balance up per our customary practices, and then the next month we pay that money back out. And so this is one of the issues that I brought up to the legislature, that the constitutional amendment is in conflict right now. And so yes, I feel like that plastic guy that needs to be stretched between the two sides of the rotunda right now. But that's okay.
Yeah,
we'll get out of here in 6 more weeks.
Well,
I got
maybe
faith.
I'll ask you which would be your pick. Will you tell us that?
Oh, you know, that's up to the legislature to decide. And I got faith that we are going to get a budget, one that I can be proud of, and go maintain our AAA credit rating, and they'll make those decisions in the coming weeks.
Comptroller Glenn Hegar, we appreciate you stopping by. Thanks so much.
Always good to be with you.
We'll continue to follow how this turns out. Thanks a lot.